The second apron might be one of the worst things to ever hit this sport, man. The second apron has destroyed a lot of teams in this era, and it's destroying the Boston Celtics as we speak right now. Today, the Boston Celtics, in a three-team trade with the Nets and the Atlanta Hawks, traded Kristaps Porzingis and a second-round pick to the Atlanta Hawks. The Celtics received from the Atlanta Hawks Jordan Niang and a second-round pick, and then the Nets received Terrence Mann and this year's number 22 overall pick. I'm going to start off with the Nets. For the Nets, you take on a bad contract in Terrence Mann. You're in a rebuild, and I'm assuming you're going to use this pick and probably the pick that you already have, which I think is like 7. I want to say, let me look at what the Brooklyn Nets pick is, but I want to say it's like 7. So I've been seeing people saying that you're probably going to use these to trade up into the draft, and I'm not at all against that. I don't believe that that's something that's fake. I do believe that you will. Yeah, so they have this year they have their 26. They have the 26th pick, the 8th pick, and the 27th pick, and the 19th pick. They have 4 picks in the first round this year. I would not be surprised at all if they use some of these picks to go trade up in the draft. And I think that would be a good move for them, especially when they're going to be able to probably get off of Cam Johnson. I'm assuming they're going to trade, well, not get off him like he's a bad player, but they're probably going to trade him, get some first-round picks in return for him, at least one first-round pick, I would guess, in return for him and everything like that. So I like this trade for the Brooklyn Nets, especially because I like the potential of what this opens up for them in this year's draft, which is in just a few days. Or when is it? Is the draft tomorrow? I think it's Thursday. Anyways, the Celtics. No, let's go to the Hawks. I'm going to get to the Celtics last. The Atlanta Hawks, I love this trade for them. Clint Capella is a free agent. Onyeka Okongwu is cool, but he's not anything special. He's not anything that like you're overly in love with. He's not anything that I think you're super attached to as an Atlanta Hawks fan. So I love you getting Kristaps Porzingis. Even if Kristaps Porzingis does prove to be a negative asset, even if whatever his health problem, his injury, whatever he has going on, even if it never ends up being anything, I like that the Atlanta Hawks are at least willing to try. I like that they're not going to be like the Miami Heat where they're going to come into this with the damn near the same team, not do anything in the offseason, not do anything at the trade deadline. I like that they're at least attempting. Now, do I think it's going to work out? I don't know. We'll see, because the idea of Kristaps Porzingis, especially over these last couple of months, is a lot different than what the reality of Kristaps Porzingis is, or what the reality of Kristaps Porzingis has been. I thought I saw a bug on the wall. The reality of what Kristaps Porzingis has been over these last couple of months, and for you to only have to give up George Niang, Terrence Mann, and a second-round pick and a number 22 pick, it's not like you gave up something crazy. You know what I'm saying? And like no, they have 5 picks now, because this isn't even, Fanspo isn't even including the 22nd pick. So yeah, they're definitely going to use some of these picks to trade up, man. Wow, good for them, for real. Really, really good for them. Yeah, they have that. Wow, that's insane. Anyways, for you to only have to give up that to get a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, I think it's worth it no matter how this shakes out. You didn't have to give up anything you were in love with. You didn't even have to give up anything that you really liked too much, because that number 22 pick is whatever. Like, I don't think you were super, super worried about that pick. And I do think that, Trae Young is such a good point guard that you're going to be able to see probably maybe what Kristaps Porzingis' best offense could be since like he's been in New York and everything like that. And you love the defense he has, especially when you've got. I just like this team, to be honest with you. The lineup of Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Richardson, Jalen Johnson when he's back healthy from his shoulder injury, and Kristaps Porzingis when he's done dealing with whatever he's dealing with, sounds like a pretty good lineup. And in a year where everybody's talking about how the East is wide open, taking a swing like this without having to give up anything crazy is a safe swing, but it's still a swing. So I am a fan of this move for the Atlanta Hawks, and I think they're the winners of this trade, and then the Brooklyn Nets, depending on what they end up doing with these picks, are going to be the second winner of this trade. And then the massive, 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 massive loser of this trade is the Boston Celtics to me, man. After you just did what I thought was a great trade, getting Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks for Drew Holiday, I thought that was a phenomenal trade. Even though I do have questions about, like, is Anthony Simons a good enough true point guard for that team, especially with Jason Tatum out and, he was their best playmaker, everything like that. I have questions about the fit, kind of, but at the same time, it's just like, it was a really good trade for you. You save money, you get younger, you get a player that has more upside at this point of his career than Drew Holiday, at least for, like, the outlook of his career. And then for you to turn around and this is the best you could get for Kristaps Porzingis. I get all the health stuff he's dealing with. I get all the rumors that are circulating during the playoffs. I get all of that. I understand people saying he's a negative asset and everything like that, and maybe that's true. Maybe we see this Atlanta trade we see this trade and we see that Atlanta's like, oh yeah, I mean, he gave us nothing. He gives us nothing. He was a negative asset. We tried and it didn't work out because he's just not that anymore. Whatever. That could very well happen, and I think it's a decently likely scenario. But you couldn't get more than George Niang and a second round pick. You couldn't get another second. You couldn't get a like George Niang is a player at least. Like he's not a guy that is just like a name that like is like who, but like at the same time, it's like there is nothing that George Niang does on a basketball court that you even like, let alone love, let alone are happy with, let alone are content with. If you're a team that's like the Boston Celtics, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if they trade him come trade deadline or even sooner if it's a possibility, depending on I don't know what the rule is and everything like that with him, but I hate this trade for the Boston Celtics. Sure, the only good thing about it, you get off the money. You get off the money, and at least you get a second round pick. You never know. Second round picks could be Nikola Jokic. It doesn't. It's literally doesn't happen ever, almost, but you never know. And with as good of a GM as Brad Stevens is, you never know. But like, that was all you could get. It just feels like blasphemous almost for you to only be able to get that much for Kristaps Porzingis, and maybe I'm overestimating his value. But my goodness, if you would have told me yesterday that Kristaps Porzingis, the only value he has for the Boston Celtics is George Niang and a second round pick, I would have told you were insane. If Desmond Bane got 4 first round picks, you couldn't have convinced me that Kristaps Porzingis couldn't have at least gotten a few seconds and a little bit of a better player. You couldn't have convinced me of that. No way you could have convinced me of that. So for the Atlanta Hawks, I give this like a B plus A minus type of thing. You don't love losing the 22nd overall pick, but like it's not like you lost a crazy pick. You didn't lose any players that you really care about. And like I said, even if the swing doesn't work, you at least attempted. You can at least tell your fans, hey man, we tried. Kristaps Porzingis didn't work out, but we tried. For the Brooklyn Nets, I think I'm not gonna grade them yet because I want to see what they do with all these picks that they have. I want to see what they try to trade up for, what they try to trade up to in the draft, and who they get when they trade up. Because all reports are coming out that Ace Bailey's falling further and further down the draft stock. His draft stock's falling further and further down. Philly's either going to draft VJ Edgecombe or trade the pick. Like a whole bunch of stuff is coming out about this draft. So I'm interested to see if they do trade up, and then if they do trade up, who they trade up to get. So I'm not going to grade this for them yet because I do believe 100% that there is another move that is coming for this. That is coming for the Brooklyn Nets. And for the Boston Celtics, man, C minus. I think the only good thing about this is that like you got off the money. D plus. Like the only good thing about this is you got off the money and maybe the headache that is the injuries of Kristaps Porzingis. Another trade that happened today that I'm not going to spend too much time on. Pelicans trade C.J. McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a future second round pick to Washington Wizards for Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, and the number 40 pick in this year's draft. For the Pelicans, it's just, again, it's a second apron thing. You're getting off of the money that is C.J. McCollum. I think his deal expires, if not after this year. I think C.J. McCollum's deal is expiring. And that's why it makes sense for the Nets, for the Wizards to do this, because they're a team that's been asked. They're not getting the picks they want, and they've been asked. So for them to just take on a bad contract of an aging guy like they already have with Chris Middleton, they already have this with Malcolm Brogdon, they already have some contracts that are, you know what I'm saying, with some older guys. I think this is just part of them taking on money to get as many picks as they can possibly get, just to try to make this rebuild go a little bit quicker, to try to make this rebuild just go a little bit faster. Yeah, his contract is up after this year. I couldn't speak, but his contract is up after this year, so expiring deal. He's old as hell. He's going to be 35 come 2026, 2027 season, so if you're a Wizards fan, I mean, it's tough because it's like, Jordan Poole is a young asset. Jordan Poole is a guy that, like, I feel like you probably could have got more than just some expiring deals and a future second-round pick for, especially when you're also giving up your own second-round pick from this year. But at the same time, I don't know that Jordan Poole had a crazy value across the league, but I don't know. I just feel like he had a pretty good season this year. As long as I'm pretty sure I'm remembering correctly that he had a pretty good season this year. So for that to be all of his value is a little interesting to me. I feel like you probably could have gotten more for him. I don't know. I just feel like Jordan Poole isn't a great fit for the Pelicans. I mean, he's a great fit for the Pelicans, and I don't think he's as I don't think I think he had more value. So I think this is kind of a lose-lose trade. I think the Pelicans did this because of second apron reasons, and I think the Wizards did this because maybe this was the best they were getting on like the trade market for Jordan Poole, and that maybe they just weren't enamored with Jordan Poole anymore. Maybe they wanted to. Maybe they're going to draft a guard who they want to get these minutes. Maybe they just want to play their younger guys. Maybe they just don't believe in Jordan Poole. I don't know. I think this is a lose-lose trade. Like at the max, I give this a C minus for both teams. I don't think either team got better here. I don't think. I mean, the Wizards might have got better for next year. Like C.J. McCollum, he might be a better. I'd have to look at the numbers. I'd have to really sit down and think about it. I mean, the Wizards might have got a little better for next year, but it's like this is a thing. This is a salary dump for the New Orleans Pelicans, and this. I don't know. I just think that like. This makes me think the Pelicans are going into like kind of a rebuild mode where it's like, okay, we traded Brandon Ingram. We might trade somebody else later in the season. Like we still might trade. You never know. They could trade a Zion. They could trade Trey Murphy. They could trade Herb Jones. They could trade any combination of these guys. They could trade DeJounte. They could trade any combination of these guys. So I don't know. It kind of makes me just feel like they're going into rebuild mode. And at the same time, it just makes me think that the second apron, man, is just... It's a tough thing to deal with, man. It is a... I don't love it. I'm not gonna lie. I don't love the second apron. I think it makes player movement happen more often, which I guess could get. But like I think that makes it harder for teams to market like a core. You know what I'm saying? Like that makes it harder for you to get a legendary team that you remember. That makes it hard for you to fall in love with a guy unless you're drafting him. You know what I'm saying? For a fan base to fall in love with a guy unless you draft him, because and even when you draft him, it's like, okay, well now if we already have some other guys on the roster that we like that are a little more expensive, by the time this guy's rookie contract is up, we're going to have to trade those guys because we're not going to be able to afford both, which is a predicament that the Houston Rockets are going to run into in a few years. So it's just interesting. I'm not the biggest fan of the second apron, but then again, I do kind of like this parody era that we're in, and I think the second apron is going to continue to make that parody era last longer, probably, unless you're a team like the OKC Thunder that has young talent, won a championship already with a young core, and all the future draft picks in the world, so you could maybe become a dynasty, I guess. But, yeah, let me know what y'all think about both of these trades. Some interesting deals going on in the NBA, for sure. All season really just started, and we're not even technically into a new season yet, and some crazy things are going on in the league. I'm just checking my ESPN, make sure nothing else happened yet, and it doesn't look like it. So yeah, man, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend if you enjoyed the video, man. And all glory to God as always. God loves you, and so do I. All right, peace out, bro.